What's going on, guys? Today I'm playing the best Goblin Barrel evolution deck in Clash Royale, and I'm going to give you 3 important tips that are going to help you dominate your opponents with this deck, so stay tuned. We got Expo Tesla the River first play. Great. We just go Goblin Gang, obviously, to get the Expo distracted so it can target the recruits, but yeah, this deck is very unique because I honestly don't know any other deck that's completely like this. It's like a mix of log bait and like bridge spam. But every card in this deck can apply pressure. That's what makes it so dangerous. We have the Mighty Miner, the Skelly Barrel, the Goblins even. The Firecracker is probably the only card that can't create pressure on its own, like by crossing the river. But that's it. Like this deck is so fun to play because you can just completely stomp on anybody no matter how many splash units they have. So first step is going to be finding out what they have in their hand for splash, because we want to obviously at the beginning of games find out what they're playing. We want to find out their spells, so just play a little bit aggressively at the beginning of the game. Don't empty your entire elixir bar, okay? I don't want to see anybody going Goblin Gang, Goblin Barrel, Goblins the River to try and figure out what spells they have, okay? That's not what I mean by that. We're gonna hit this ability and it's gonna give us like what, 6 expo shots. Yeah, okay, we can deal with that. But yeah, we want to figure out his spells obviously at the beginning of the game. First step is find out his spells. Second step, figure out his units for splash, I guess, whatever you call them, swarm counters. So like Valkyries, wizards, bombers, because then we could start building a plan to figure out what we're gonna do to take this guy's tower. So obviously this guy having the log means that I can pretty much just log bait by doing this. He did go queen in the back, so that's kind of a negative investment. And he has to drop a Tesla in this lane, which completely, like, just eradicates his push that he wanted to do with the queen. Because you can tell he wanted to go queen in the back and start up an expo, but you can't do that because as soon as he looks like he's gonna start applying pressure, we can go in the opposite lane. That's the first tip that I would give you guys, is you want to first figure out what he's playing. Obviously it's kind of not a tip, that's just what you want to do at the beginning of every game, and then we want to apply pressure in the opposite lane that he's pushing in so that he's forced to spend elixir on it. And the Evolved Goblin Barrel doing a little bit of damage there. That's kind of nice. This deck overall as a whole is really good. It's not just the Goblin Barrel that's going to carry you. So as you can see, we just completely stomp on this guy by spell baiting him, and I don't even get time to fully explain my first tip, so I'll do that in the next game. GG, guys. Like I was saying, as we face EA Felipe here, we're going to start off the same way, trying to figure out what he's got for our countering our pushes. So what we want to do is kind of figure out, obviously, as the game goes on, we know what he wants to push with. So let's say he's got, okay, this guy's got recruits. So if he wants to build up a recruits push, that is actually the opposite of my point, because you can't really go opposite lane against recruits, can you? Well, in any other game where he doesn't have recruits, the thing we're going to want to do is if he looks like he's building up a push, you go opposite lane. Now the important thing is to not go opposite lane with something weak. We got to go opposite lane with something big and strong and girthy. And this is beautiful because obviously we're going to apply pressure in the opposite lane too, but the Mighty Miner ability comes down and it doesn't hit anything. Well, it hits a lot, but it doesn't hit the right stuff there. So right off the bat, again, we're just spell baiting and going in aggressively, and that's probably more important than tip number 1, honestly. Tip number 2 is being as aggressive as you can early in the game when your opponent doesn't have elixir. So that's the biggest thing. Honestly, I'd say that's the biggest tip. You want to be as aggressive as you can in single elixir. Now, how you do that is not necessarily just dumping all of your elixir. It's kind of strategic in a sense. Well, I mean, to be fair, it's not very smart. It's like, okay, well, it's not very intelligent, okay? It's smart, but it's not intelligent, if you know what I'm saying. It's not like skill. We're just kind of spamming things at the river once he plays his spells. Yeah, aggressive is just key with this deck. We want to keep pushing. And, you know, it kind of sucks we're not going to get to show off the Goblin Barrel Evo again because we already took a tower. That's maybe the only downside to this deck, is that the Evo Goblin Barrel kind of doesn't do a lot if you're actually playing really well. So we obviously are going with some spell bait there and just got his bar barrel out. Okay, so that's what kind of what I'm doing the entire time I'm thinking about playing this deck. Is just all that's going through my head is spells, splash counters, what he's doing on offense. That's it. That's all that's happening. So Void coming in on the flying machine. Obviously, it's a pretty good play because I'm not getting rid of a flying machine. There's no way I'm getting rid of that. I don't have anything for the flying machine, so that's a big tip with these decks. I'm actually gonna just completely. Oh, here's this Barb Barrel. What a noob. We got 15 goblins on the board, and that's gonna be another 3 crown before the timer expires. So once again, in the middle of explaining my tip, whoa, pause, and yeah, I have to delay it to the next game. So we're a bit unorganized right now, and I apologize for that. Let me explain what we've got so far. So tip number 1, we're trying to find out what our opponent's playing and kind of counter push off of that and push opposite lane. So let's see my opponent, let's say, sorry, my opponent goes like with the golem or giant or a night witch in the opposite lane. What we want to do, especially if they use a support troop, we want to apply pressure opposite lane, but it's important to know when to do that. So like here, since I don't really have great, like I used my Mighty Miner, I don't have great counters. Now we're going opposite lane because the wizard comes out and he's low on elixir and he uses arrows. So that's exactly what we're going to avoid here real quick, and then we'll go Goblin Barrel. That's kind of the tricky thing against Dagger Duchess. I don't even know if I needed that Goblin Barrel. But that's the tricky thing against the Dagger Duchess is you can't really go opposite lane very reliably, so you have to know exactly when to do it. So you kind of want to... you don't have to necessarily count elixir, but you can realize if your opponent spends a lot of elixir, then you just go opposite lane. But you have to be smart with what you're doing it with. Because just going with like, I don't know, goblins or goblin gang or skelly barrel into a Dagger Duchess isn't good. Because all they have to do, you don't want to counter push or go opposite lane if your opponent can wrap it up with like 2 or 3 elixir. Because then they can just push anyways. Only push with things that are going to guaranteed get damage or force elixir out. Significant elixir. So as you can see, we defended his first push because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to push opposite lane. And then he went in with an aggressive, really aggressive wizard. And we're probably going to lose this tower too. But that's okay because we're going to get a counter push, okay? I just don't think I'm defending this. Like, my Mighty Miner's gone, you know. The Void's not going to get any value. We don't have... This is just a very bad hand. So we lose this tower, which stinks. But what doesn't stink is we're going to get this tower right back because... I don't think he has very good counters for this. The wizard is good, obviously, but we can kind of overrun the wizard a lot. So as you can see, we give up that tower, but we also take his tower down to 942, so that's pretty good. Tip number 2. Wait, what was tip number 2 again? Look, sorry, I have short-term memory loss. Tip number 2. God, what was tip number 2? I have no idea what tip number 2 is. Is that embarrassing, chat? I have no idea what I just gave you, like, what, 3-4 minutes ago? Okay, well, I'm sure I'm sure you guys will figure it out because you've already watched that part of the video. I'm sorry, bro. I'm so unorganized right now. I'm just thinking about the spam, man. So obviously this is a little bit tricky. We might use the ability here just to get rid of the knight. Oh, okay. Well, they're all 1 HP, so I can void and get rid of most of that stuff, which is a bit dangerous. But we get a defensive Goblin Barrel coming out, and once again, we took his tower early in the game, so we didn't get to use the freaking Evo Goblin Barrel. I haven't used it once this game on like actual offense, bro. Once on this video, I haven't even used it yet. So I'd say tip number 3 is very important as well. What you're gonna want to do is realize what card. This kind of comes with practice and game experience, but you kind of want to like set up your defense in a way. You want to realize what cards are best for defense and what you should save and what you should go in on offense with. So you want to differentiate between these are the cards I use on offense and these are the cards I want to use on defense. Number 1 is the Mighty Miner. The Mighty Miner is something that you absolutely need to save for defense almost all the time. The exception is when you have a tower taken and you can do the little play where you go like Mighty Miner in one lane where the tower's down and oh my god, that goblin, and then you swap lanes and you like get directly on the tower. That's the only exception, I think. I'd love for him to pop the ability here because that's a free King Tower activation. Yeah, we're gonna get a King Tower activation, bro. We get a King Tower activation. Thank you, Mr. Monk. But okay, I need to make sure that this is a very important tip as well, so I need to make sure that you guys get it. We want to know what cards are good for offense and what cards are good for defense. Mighty Miner is something you absolutely have to save for defense. Goblin Gang as well is something I would say to save for defense. And Firecracker as well. The biggest thing I see with Firecracker players, especially players playing Evo Firecracker, is that they use the Firecracker like at the bridge to get chip damage way too much. The Firecracker and the Mighty Miner are your 2 most important defensive cards. So you absolutely need to save these cards. You cannot use them on offense like that. Unless they're counter pushing, obviously, you like already played them on defense and then they're on offense. Because people that are inexperienced will struggle to defend with this deck. It's you know, it is what it is. If you don't really have the greatest game knowledge yet, or you haven't been playing for long enough, you're going to have a very hard time defending. And defending is honestly, this is kind of the bonus tip, honorable mention. Honestly, the last one could have been an honorable mention too, but you want to be able to use your spell bait not only on offense but on defense as well, because many people, when they think of this deck and spell baiting, they're like, okay, my opponent used log on the Goblin Barrel and now I'm gonna go Goblin Gang at the river, right? But honestly, the same thing applies for defense. Because you can go, like, let's say I go with a massive push here, and hopefully this, no, that's not even going to take the left tower. The Goblin Barrel Evo not really doing anything this video. I promise it's good, bro. I'm just not getting good examples of it. But yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, if I can bait out if I'm in a spot where my opponent has arrows for Firecracker and I need Firecracker for defense, my #1 strategy should be trying to get him to play arrows on defense. So I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure we can get arrows on defense out. Mighty Miner should be able to pop this ability and kill all the skeletons. If it doesn't, I'm screwed. Alright, we're good. That's a good GG right there. But I'll talk about this tip in the next one, because it's really in the next game, because it's really important that you guys get this one down. The best thing that you could do for yourself is learn how to spell bait on defense. That's the thing I was talking about. So if you, for example, have an opponent that's playing with arrows and you really need the Firecracker for defense, for whether he's playing a beatdown deck or whatever, what you can do is figure out ways to go in on offense that force out the arrows. So based on what he has in the game, I can't really give you a set example because everybody plays a different deck almost. So let's say you need to build up a push that will make your opponent get arrows. How am I going to defend this? I might need to take some wizard damage, but it's okay because the Skelly Barrel, he spent all of his elixir, so that's good for me. But oh, that little prince kind of crappy, don't you think? But yeah, that's kind of, you guys see where I'm coming from this, right? Like if we need Firecracker on defense, what I can do is maybe start up, maybe if he has 2 small spells, I can go with my Goblin Barrel tanking by a Mighty Miner, in which case we would use the Mighty Miner on offense. I can use that to tank for a barrel, and that would force out like a log or something. And then let's say I go in with recruits and I try and mount it offensive and I just spam one lane with a bunch of cheap stuff. Like maybe I go recruits and then goblins and then Skelly Barrel and we force them to arrows. Basically, you just want to force your opponent to you control the game, guys. Like your opponent does not control the game. Every single card in this deck is applying pressure or is a swarm card. So you don't have to worry about, you know, oh, my goblins are going to get my Goblin Barrel's not going to get to the tower, my Skelly Barrel's not getting to the tower. There are so many ways to be creative with offense with this deck, guys. I promise the more you play it, the more you're just going to find out that it's just excellent. So the sad thing about this is this guy is still playing, which I feel like is kind of surprising. I mean, I know never give up, never back down, right? But I feel like this game is over, yo. Like I know it's really hard to defend a balloon, but okay, this is the perfect example. Let's say I'm playing against a balloon player, right? And they have arrows for my Firecracker. My Firecracker is the only thing I really have for offense or for defense. So my strategy, let's go in with Mighty Miner Goblin Barrel, or let's go in with Mighty Miner Skelly Barrel, or Goblin Gang, or Recruits Goblin Gang. And that way, we want to force the arrows out. And if, let's say, my opponent's just an idiot and he's still, oh, I messed up. Speaking of idiots, I messed up, man. I gave him my tower. But let's say he's a Sigma and he just freaking arrows your Firecracker anyways. That means that all you have to do now is just double down on the offense, because you already have offense coming on, and then you can just continue spamming because he used all of his swarm cards. So I hope those tips helped you. If it didn't, let me know what I can clarify in the comments. Definitely try out this deck, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.